video this as well. What we're going to go over is just a couple of things that we might not have covered in detail yet, and also some things that weren't necessarily set up before. And kind of the emphasis tonight on actual operation of this is also going to be for people who are not paramedics, who aren't going to be running this as any sort of cardiac monitor, but just as an AED. If you're the first on scene somewhere on a BLS ambulance, this is your AED. You're not going to have a standard, Philips or the basic one. It works very similarly the way it's set up, but you just need to know a couple of little steps that are important to get it to go into AED mode. So we'll cover that. We'll also just go over some of the basics of it again, just so everybody's familiar with how it does work, because these are probably going to go into service on Thursday. And so starting Thursday, this is a cardiac monitor that you're going to have on board. So we have loaded these up now. They are set up. I will get the inventories to Mr. Demo to get those updated in the ambulances, but I tried to organize them as best I could. The nice thing about these monitors is they are quite a bit smaller and lighter, and the bags are quite a bit smaller and lighter. That's the upside. The downside is it's definitely 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. So when you are putting these away, please try to be careful and put things away where they actually go. We've tried to kind of segment it out. This is sort of how the Zoll rep says most people do it. Basically what you've got is on this, what I'll call the left side pocket, is kind of this is your standard call. Okay, so for your standard call, you're basically going to probably need blood pressure cuff, and there are different sleeves in here with the cords fed into those sleeves. So when you do put things away, don't try not to just pile them all in one spot. Put them back in their different sleeves. You've got your blood pressure cuff, which we'll go over again, your SpO2 and carbon monoxide, and then you've got your cable for your 4-lead, and you got your dots for your 4-lead, okay? So for a lot of more basic calls, this left side pouch is the only pouch you're gonna need to go into, okay? So that's the left side pouch, and we'll go over some of the stuff that's in here. Actually, I guess we'll go over this right now. So as far as the SpO2 goes, it's a single probe. Obviously, this is a reusable probe. We don't throw this out. One thing to note as far as the SpO2 goes, once you got the probe on there, you can see down here in the corner you got your yellow SpO2 reading. It shows up pretty rapidly. It will take a couple of seconds before it actually gives you a decent reading. Hey, I'm sat in 100%. Below it you will see SpCO2, that's your carbon monoxide. Reads through the same probe. Don't have to switch anything, don't have to press any buttons, it reads all the time, which is nice. That means even if it's not something that, a call that really tripped your thought of like, hey, this might be a CO poisoning, you're still gonna get, presumably if somebody's not feeling well, you're gonna find out what they're setting, and you're gonna get their carbon monoxide level as well. Carbon monoxide can take quite a bit longer to come up. It can take close to 30 seconds after you put this probe on someone's finger. You'll see this little sizing thing on here for the probe. You're ideally looking for the finger that somebody can just kind of get most of their fingernail through. I mean, I can't even really fit my finger through there, but so they do say it's not too super sensitive size-wise for the SpO2, but it's a lot more sensitive for the carbon monoxide. So try to get it sized right. Try to get it so that you don't have any light escaping here. If somebody's got big fat fingers, you can go all the way down to their pinky, because you don't want like this little part sort of splayed out. With a lot of light leaking around the outside, you're going to get some very inaccurate readings. Okay? Not to jump around too much, but in the back pouch on these, there is a little, well, 2 out of 3 of them. We seem to have already lost one of these, but I'm going to try to find another one. There is going to be a little quick reference guide in there if you ever need to look something up. And then there is also a carbon monoxide guide from Massimo, who makes the carbon monoxide detector. It gives you a little bit of an idea about placement and a little bit of an idea about the values that you might see. Basically anything 10% or below is most likely something normal. 0 to 5 could definitely be normal. It can be pretty random. 5 to 10 might not be that normal, but it'd be kind of random or kind of normal for, say, a smoker. And then anything above 10 is probably considered an abnormal assessment. And so there's probably something going on. So if you see, you know, somebody's having difficulty breathing, or they just feel kind of lousy and they've got a carbon monoxide reading of 7 and they're a heavy smoker, don't just sit there and go, oh, it's carbon monoxide poisoning. It's probably not. It's probably something else. If they've got a carbon monoxide reading of 25, you know, you're starting to get into something significant, and it's a pretty good bet that that's what's at least part of what's going on there. Okay? Blood pressure cuff. We have already had one of these break. So these little attachments are somewhat delicate. This is how you detach. There's two hoses, so that it can listen on the way up and the way down. Should make for much faster blood pressures, but it does seem like these little attachments are quite delicate. So if one of these little jobbies breaks, you can hopefully it won't be on this full double hose, but this little guy actually comes out of the blood pressure cuff. We will have spares of these on the ambulance. They will be up with the spare Zoll pads. Okay. Once I found somebody pointed out that one of them had been broken, I went to order them. They come in boxes of 12. So anything that comes in a box of 12 leads me to believe they break with some frequency. So we're going to carry a spare on each ambulance for that. But this is also how you would swap around to different cuffs. The more sensitive these machines get and the more accurate they get, from what I gather, the more sensitive they are to missized cuffs. So really try to be good about picking the right size cuff. Standard.
Are those connectors the same?
As far as I've been able to tell, yeah, they go either way. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll find out. But as far as I can tell, yes. We carry a regular cuff pre-connected. In this right outside pouch, we have an adult large and an adult small cuff. There's a big thigh cuff that there's just basically wouldn't fit in here anyway, that will be on the ambulance in with all the other miscellaneous cuffs. But the thigh cuff is not going to be on here. And obviously this is the whole, this is a brand new system, these dual lumen BP cuffs, you know, you're not going to be able to use any of the old cuffs. We'll clear them out of there, but nothing else is going to work with this except the dual lumen style. Okay. Yikes. No, I'm not going to that. You also have your 4-lead in here, and you get 2 sets of 4-lead dots in this left-hand pouch. Okay. In the back, you have a spare battery. You have your 12-lead cable, 2 sets of 6 dots for the 12 leads, and some razors. So that's kind of similar to how the back of the Zolls go now. And then you also have your spare battery. We do not have our battery charger adapter yet. So you might come across one of these. It's actually plugged in on the rig that's attached to this little port. Just pull it out before you walk off with the Zoll. So anytime you're going to grab a Zoll, until we know we've got all our battery adapters up and running and we just run like we have with the previous Zolls, just please check and see if it's plugged in before you yank it out of there. I believe this thing's supposed to detach without too much damage, but we still don't really want to test that. Okay. Inner right-hand pouch is for when your day is not going so smoothly. We have one pre-connected pair of adult CPR style pads with the puck. Then we've got a spare set of adult pads and a set of PD pads. For right now, we have a mixed batch of PD pads, so you're just gonna have to check and see what you've got. Some of them have the old style plug. Some of them have the newer style. That's not what I hope. The newer style plug. Okay, so by newer, I told you 5 pounds of stuff in it. 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. So the newer style pads have this big, large plug. It plugs into this big adapter. Okay. If you end up with one of these older style pads with just the 2 prongs, you just have to actually detach that from the adapter. And then this plugs in to that. Okay? This is not disposable. This needs to come home with us.
It's not the hospitals.
It is not the hospitals, that is
They try
ours.
to take it.
I know, they do.
Doesn't that small connector go into one side of that big connector?
So, another way you can do that,
Smart guy. Smart guy.
then why the hell is this thing detachable. So, another easier way to do that. Personally, I like to do things in a more difficult fashion. But if you're lazy and you want to do the easy thing, try that. Okay.
That's awesome.
All right. Fine. Dave's gonna run the rest of this. I'm out of here.
Pastor, you should learn how the voice command works.
I don't know. I don't know how anything works on this, obviously. So, yeah, if you want to talk to it, you can. Tell it to do things. It's not going to work, but you can do it. So in this right-hand outer pouch, you got your 2 spare BP cuffs. You've also got your airway adapter for end-tidal CO2, and you've got the nasal cannula style CO2 reader, and you got a spare roll of paper. Okay? We are getting some. We're not going to have any disposable SpO2 adapters or readers for this. It's basically, if you need to do it for a ped or an infant, just use the standalone SpO2. But we are going to try the ear SpO2 readers because they're supposed to be good for people with cold hands, hypothermia patients, or just people they're having bad perfusion. You're having trouble getting any good readings in their fingers, and that's going to live over here in your standard case when we get those. But they keep telling me they've shipped and they don't get here, so they're not here yet. Okay? Any questions about where anything is stored? All right. We are going to see. We've covered a couple things. I know it's gonna be a little hard for people to see, but we're just gonna go over a little bit of the basics of the screen and everything. Just not super in depth. I'll send out a link after this drill that will show where you can find links to some of the more in-depth videos if you haven't seen all of the videos, or if you just want them for reference. They're now on kind of a little video library on our intranet. But a couple things that haven't really been stressed in some of the other in-services and that are changes that we might have made, we'll go through here. So obviously, to turn it on, you can ask it to turn on with your voice, but nothing's actually going to happen. So you can press the power button. If this has been powered off for less than 2 minutes, it's going to continue where it was before. So if you were working on a patient and you lose battery power, or you turn it off by accident or something like that, turn it on within 2 minutes, turn it back on within 2 minutes, and it will continue with that same patient. After 2 minutes, it's going to consider it a new patient. Okay? Most of the buttons, these hard buttons are pretty straightforward over here. You've got your home button that's going to kind of cycle you through viewing trends, or just viewing large screen without the rhythm on there or anything, or just bring you back to kind of your standard single rhythm strip, SpO2, respirations, blood pressure, heart rate. Respirations is only going to work if you basically generally ignore the respirations thing, because it's not going to work for us very often. The only way this machine's going to read respirations is if we're doing chest leads for the 4 lead, and we don't tend to do those very often anymore because limb leads are a better idea if you're going to go to a 12 lead. So unless you get the 4 lead on their chest, that respiration thing is probably not going to read. If it does, it's probably not going to read accurately. Okay. Obviously your blood pressure button, pretty straightforward. This is this little paper over here. So these are your soft buttons. These will change function depending on what you're up to. One distinction to remember, you get your little roll of paper there. Basically, if you press that, it starts to print. Press it again, and it will stop printing. Okay? That's just like our current recorder button. This over here is your snapshot button. What that actually is 12 seconds before and 12 seconds after you pressed snapshot. So the nice thing about that is if you see something weird go by, you press snapshot, it's still got it in memory and it will print it out for you. The snapshot can also be saved and sent or printed later. If you've done vitals, or if you've got the SpO2 on while you're doing a snapshot, that info will be printed on there as well. Okay? And when you look at the print, we're going to go through a lot of paper with these machines. I can pass that around. There's a little camera icon on the strip that just shows you what moment you actually pressed snapshot. So everything before that was what it was just recording in memory until you pressed snapshot. It's really hard looking upside down. As far as changing things on here, on a lot of these items here, you can scroll around with these up and down buttons, and you'll see something like, maybe you can see that, it's blue. That means I've selected that, and if I press this enter button, I'm probably going to find some options in there. It might be setting alarm settings, or we're not going to go into all of those, but just know that that's a way to kind of scroll around and change things. So, for example, pads, there are two ways to, where this says pads, there are two ways to change the leads that you're viewing. So if somebody asks you to change the leads for them, you know, I want to see lead 2 or lead 3, you can either press this soft button right here, and it will just scroll through the different leads, or since that's highlighted blue, I can hit enter, and then I can just move up and down this list with the up and down button and hit enter again to select it. So there are a couple of different things where you can select something like that, either with a soft key, or you highlight it blue and then hit the enter button and then choose the options that are in there. Okay? Trying to make sure I'm going through this in some sort of order. Well, actually, maybe not order, but at least complete. So another thing that we can do with these that is hopefully a cool feature that hopefully will work for us is transmitting 12 leads to the hospital. I know we've talked about this before, but I can now actually show you how it works. So the way it's going to work is it's got to be connected to some sort of internet source. Okay. So what we are using right now is going to be the iPads in the ambulances as a hotspot. So right off the bat, that means an ambulance 631, you cannot transmit a 12 lead because we don't have an iPad in there. Okay. So to transmit a 12 lead, first of all, you have to acquire it, and I think we've gone over that quite a bit. We're not going to go over it again right now. But say I've already got one that I've acquired, you can go find an old one, select it, you're viewing it, and then you're going to want to hit this transmit button. It looks like a little envelope. But there are a couple steps you got to look at first. So right up here, it's pretty hard to see. There's a little, it looks like a flower. It's got little yellow branches on it, or little yellow leaves on it, okay? If it's smaller yellow lights on there, that means you are not connected to any internet source, okay? That's how it's often going to be. I will try to not go on a rant about Apple products, but basically the issue we're running into here is your lovable iPad in 611 and 612. Even though hotspot's turned on this right now, it's not showing up. It's not available. And that's just a glitch in the way that the iPads work. There's nothing I've been able to find so far that I can do about it to make it stay alive. So if you're going to transmit a 12 lead, you're going to have to either yourself or have your driver or somebody, is actually basically what they need to do is wake up this iPad. So hit the little button, okay, gonna come up onto the screen. You actually need to go to settings, and you need to, can't read that upside down, sorry. You need to go to personal hotspot, and you'll see, you probably can't see it from there, but the personal hotspot is shown as on this thing right now. And now, it just had to think about it, and now I can see the personal hotspot is actually available. So I did not turn anything on or off on the personal hotspot. All I did was go to settings and tap the personal hotspot pane, and now it comes alive again.
How long does that seem to stay alive? Did you check that?
It's hard to say. Sometimes it seems like it's been live for 10 or 15 minutes, other times less.
Okay.
What I've read in researching this is if it locks itself, which these are set not to lock themselves for an hour, if it locks itself, it's going to turn the hotspot off, unless something's actively using it.
I'm probably going to answer this, but can you
instead of dealing with the iPad, can you use your own phone for the hotspot?
Yeah, you need to set up a temporary connection though. So there's a built-in connection for this hotspot. So as soon as this hotspot is live, this Zoll is going to connect to that hotspot. And the way you know it's connected is now we look, and that little thing that had the little yellow leaves on it now has two green bars like it's broadcasting. That means it's actually made a connection. That's a built-in, it's already pre-configured. There is a way to do a temporary connection to your phone. I just haven't played with it enough yet, but I will show some people how to do that if they're interested. Ooh, I had something else along those lines. I totally
And
forgot
then
what I was gonna
is
say.
there a set, when you hit the envelope to send it, is there a set number in there? That
Yeah,
is-
we'll get into that. But before you do that, you want to, and so this isn't, so nothing's fast here either. So you hit personal hotspot on this tablet. It took about 10-15 seconds to actually turn the hotspot back on. And then once that hotspot's on, it's taking our Zoll a little while to actually realize there's now a Wi-Fi signal that it can connect to and connect to it. Hopefully these are labeled specific to an ambulance. I'm hoping that the way I've set these up, if you swap them from ambulance to ambulance, let's try not to do it permanently, but if you happen to start out in one ambulance and you end up going into another ambulance, hopefully they will connect even regardless of which ambulance they're in. This is actually 631's Zoll, and it's connecting to ambulance 611's iPad, so hopefully that will work. So it's not even worth trying to transmit if you don't see the little green broadcast thing on this little tree up here, okay? But we see it as green right now, so we just see the little envelope button. We're gonna go ahead and hit that. You only have one choice, St. Luke's Wood River Medical Center, okay? Unfortunately, it's 2 button strokes to get there. You're gonna hit enter once, and you're gonna see that little green checkbox next to it, but now you still need to scroll down until transmit is highlighted. Then you're gonna hit enter again. Then you wanna watch for this green light to turn on, and that's gonna let you know it's transmitting, okay? So we hit enter, see the green light turns on, now it's negotiating and it's gonna go ahead and send that, okay? It's gonna send it to the fax machine at the unit secretary's desk at the ER. I don't expect this to be something that they would just turn around and grab and know what's going on. By far your best bet of getting a doctor to look at that before you get there is to either call them on the phone or do it on your radio report and give them the heads up that this is coming to them. Don't just transmit it and hope that it gets there and hope that somebody sees it and reads it, because they're not going to get any real notification of it, and they might not even know which patient you're sending it for. So give them a heads up that that's coming to them. Okay? Any questions on any of that?
Did they just get one?
They just-
No, so that's just a contact, and right now that contact is just my email address.
Oh, okay.
But starting Thursday, I'll probably have my email address still in there for a while, so I know it's working right. But then I'll have their cell phone or their fax number in there.
Guys, what do they get? What information are they seeing on this?
They are seeing, and I wish I had one that was printed out. It prints out pretty nicely. It is, however, just the 12 lead. If you email it, and we've decided not to do that, it can also have some vitals on there, like a recent blood pressure and sat and stuff like that. But the ones that we are faxing are just going to be, I believe, unless Dave tells me differently. Actually, you know what? It looks like this is actually sending. This is sending everything: heart rate. Actually, just heart rate. It doesn't look like it's going to do blood pressure or things like that. But it could just be because we didn't capture blood pressure on this test 12 lead. But you can hand that around.
Oh, cool.
So it's a pretty good looking one. They should have a pretty easy time of interpreting it and getting some good information from it. The last thing we're going to get into here, unless there are any questions about that transmitting. I know it sounds like kind of a pain in the ass. I wish I had a better solution right now, but I don't. So the last thing we're going to get into is running a code with this, and not too much of like the paramedic level side of it, but more the basic EMT side of it, as far as either using this as an AED or if you're working with the paramedic and they're asking you to do some things. So for adults, we've got the CPR puck. Basically, if you start doing CPR on someone with one of these pucks with it connected, it's going to realize you're doing CPR, and it's going to start with its whole CPR screen where it shows you the quality of your compressions and everything like that. So, but that's just for CPR. To actually run it as an AED, you do need to press one button. You need to press the Analyze button. Oops, geez, well, you need to be not in that screen, I guess. So, if you press Analyze, was a good test. I wanted to see what happened.
You're still in your 12-8 screen.
Right, but that shouldn't matter anyway. Oh,
Attach
it does.
pad.
All right, there you go. So,
Which button were you pushing, the far left yellow button?
yep, far left says Analyze. So basically just think of the Analyze button as putting it into AED mode. It's going to start with, just like when you turn on a regular AED, like we do our CPR testing with, there's only one more step. Turn it on, press Analyze, and then it's going to do voice prompts and everything very similar. So first thing it's going to tell you to do, attach pads. Oop, hold on. Let's put this person in the lethal rhythm.
Stand clear.
So it's automatically analyzing. It's telling you to stand clear. We don't do compressions during this
Press
period
shock.
when it's doing it automatically. You do have to press the shock button, and then you're going to go right back to CPR. So for the CPR portion, it's going to give you this screen that shows what the quality of your CPR is. Anything in green is good, anything in yellow is bad. So right now, I don't know if you guys can see that necessarily, but you can see my rate was in green, but my depth was in yellow. So if I'm doing decent rate,
Push harder.
but I'm going too shallow, it's going to give you a voice prompt, and you're going to see
Push
that that's
harder.
yellow, and it's telling me to push harder. I'm pushing nice and hard,
Good compression.
but too slow.
I like it.
You're going to see I'm actually going too deep, but I'm also going too slow. That number's in yellow, but you also hear that beeping noise. It's kind of confusing. It's not really an alarm beep. That's actually a metronome. So that's the rate you want to be going. And now everything's happy.
Kind of is an alarm. It's not,
Yeah.
you're not doing it right.
It is an alarm, but it's also giving you the rate you're supposed to be going.
It's an alarm with a solution.
And, yep. I like that. And you also have this little diamond here that shows the quality of your compressions. So if you're doing good rate, good depth, good recoil, I can't really make the recoil thing happen on this. It will warn you if you're not getting far enough off the chest. But if you're doing all those three things well, then you're actually going to see that little diamond is going to be pretty filled out. And that means you're doing good compressions. Okay? It also has a timer on it. You can see actually it says CPR time, counting down to 23. This is going to count down just like any other AED. It's going to count down your 2 minutes, and then it's going to tell you to stand clear, and it's going to analyze again on its own. So we're in full AED mode right now. Okay? Paramedics can take it out of AED mode just by adjusting the level.
Stop.
Drops you out of AED
CPR.
mode.
Stand clear.
The joules, yep. So tells you to stop, tells you to stand
Press
clear.
shock.
Shock again.
Perform
Go
CPR.
right back to CPR. Okay? If no shock is advised, it's still going to continue to go through the same series. It's going to stop you every 2 minutes. It's going to analyze, and it's just going to say no shock advised. Perform CPR. Okay? This is showing me how long I've been idle doing my CPR.
What's it printing there?
Reams and reams of paper. So we're gonna go. It's a good thing paper's not too expensive. So it prints when it shocks, basically. So it's gonna print on a lot of things, and then you can print summaries. And when that comes up, we'll go over how to do it. We're not gonna get into it tonight, but because you can print vitals, trends, and things like that.
It stores the idle time as well, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, AHA's really preaching
Yeah.
stay on the chest, so it
Yeah.
knows. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that last bit of printing was just because it had delivered a shock, and it has all the data that it would, that ours does too. Our current ones do too. What you actually delivered the shock at and everything like that. And it will have the see-through rhythm. You can see your CPR, but it'll still show you the see-through rhythm. Paramedic comes on scene, even if it's still in AED mode, they can at least look at it and say, okay, we're just gonna let it keep going in AED mode for right now. But then they can also just adjust the power level and charge and shock when they want to, and that's going to actually put it back into manual mode. Now when you're in manual mode, it will still do timing. It will still obviously record. It will start to time your compressions when you go back on the chest. It'll run pretty similarly, it just won't stop automatically every 2 minutes and tell you to get off the chest and analyze. The other thing that you might be asked to do, even if a paramedic's running this in more of a manual mode, we've got this little RX, this little prescription button over here. These are our code markers. We've had these before on the old monitors, but it was about 6 or 7 key presses to get to each code marker. Too much trouble. This is super easy. There's basically, press that. There's one page here, or you can go to the second page of code markers. So you can go back and forth to the 2 pages. And the code markers are super straightforward. Basically, you can just mark the time where you do a pulse check, or you start an IV, or you intubate them, or you give them epi, or check a BGL, or give them some of the more, page 2, some more obscure drugs. But it just saves having to write this stuff down. So you can just mark it, like you start an IV or you do an IO. Somebody might just say, just do the code marker for IV IO. All you have to do is hit, if you're back here, you just hit the prescription button. It says IV IO right there. Boom, that's all you need to do. And now that's marked in a code summary that can be printed out later with that time. And then you can put all your times together so that you actually know, like based on when you shocked somebody, based on when you're doing CPR, when did you start that IV, and you don't have to go find your clipboard in some mayhem kind of situation. Any questions on any of that? Okay, any questions on these about anything else? Okay, cool. So when we put these back in service, let's just make sure that they go back in service. Like I said, there are a couple of little sleeves inside each outer pouch and the inner pouch, and it's just going to be a lot easier if we don't just cram everything in there, because if you cram everything in there, you pull one thing out and everything comes flying out at you. If we put things back carefully, hopefully the next time we use them will go smoothly.
And on that note, just a pet peeve of mine, but since these are nice brand new pieces of technology that we have, and then we have our green and yellow bags, be real mindful of where you're setting those down on a scene, because we're going to have these things for a long time, and we want to kind of keep them nice. And so, if you're going into the crummy apartment where there's poop and whatever, don't put it on the floor. I've just seen a lot of that, because and I don't blame anyone, but just be mindful of where you're putting it on the ground so that it stays nice. Sorry, anal.
Bass and I know at the first in service,
Anal.
there was some concern that the audio feedback could be traumatizing for bystanders.
So we do not have audio feedback on these. It is an extra piece of hardware that does not exist on these machines right now.
Oh,
So
yeah, I
there
thought
is
it does
no
say
there is no audio
push harder,
record.
you're-
Oh,
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant recording of the code.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was that. Unfortunately, there's no way that I've been able to find to turn on the voice prompts for stand clear, analyzing, attach pad,
Leave
stuff
the
like
other
that,
off.
and leave out
Okay.
the other.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah, we do still have the push harder. One last thing too that just reminded me. So you saw the green light that went on when it transmitted. These are your 2 warning lights. Orange or yellow means some minor warning. Red means some serious warning. So if if somebody's heart rate goes from 60 to 0, this thing's gonna start freaking out on you, and that red light's probably gonna go on. If you just disconnect something, I'm disconnecting the pads right now, or you disconnect the SPO2 probe, you're just gonna see this yellow light. That's a minor warning. If it keeps beeping at you, just hit the alarm silence. And when you've hit the alarm silence, you'll also see the lights go silent. Okay? I don't know if you can alarm silence the red ones.
What would be an example of red?
Like heart rate goes to 0,
Oh,
something like that.
really bad.
Somebody
Yeah.
goes into VFib.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
something bad.
Is there any alarms on the CO monitor?
I don't think so. Actually, there might be. I'd have to check the levels they're set on. Everything does have an alarm level. I customized them some. I didn't play with the CO, and I can't remember what they were. But the alarm levels I've made pretty generous. I think it's pretty useless for our alarms to go off at, a heart rate of 120. I mean, it's just not, we're just going to start ignoring those alarms because they're going to be going off all the time.
Right, exactly.
So generally, if you find that something alarmed at you and you don't think that was a worthwhile time for it to alarm, tell us what happened and we'll talk about adjusting that particular alarm. But usually if this thing alarms on some vital signs at you, it's because it's pretty bad about those vitals. It's not just like, it's not just not 60 to 100. It's like they got a heart rate of 180 or
BP
or
at 220
30.
over 130.
Yeah.
Is it just straight numbers, or does it go for like various changes? Like if it's
No, it's straight numbers. And if you really do want the numbers to kind of watch you accurately, another thing to note up here is next to the little broadcast symbol is you can see it say adult. That means this is set to the adult alarm limits. Now it doesn't really change a whole lot else as far as the way this works. It has nothing to do with shocking for an AED. So if you plug in the pediatric pads, it doesn't matter what this setting is, it's going to do pediatric energy levels. But if you want it to do pediatric or infant alarm levels, you just go back and forth till that's highlighted blue, hit enter, choose from pediatric or neonate, and hit enter again. And so this is now set to pediatric. So this will probably alarm if you have a heart rate of 80, because that's not an alarmable rate for an adult, but it is for a ped. Okay, and those sorts of little changes you're going to make up here for adult versus pediatric or neonate, or changing the pads and stuff, that all goes away after 2 minutes. When you turn it off, leave it off for at least 2 minutes, turn it back on, it will go back to its default settings.